Hi, sorry, I'm Mark. This is Damien. Hi, DesignOffice. This is obviously for the interior category. It's a project called the Carringbush Hotel, which is located in Abbotsford. I'll take you through a bit of an overview of it first in terms of context. Client sort of essentially kind of almost accidentally bought the entire building without really thinking about it too much and came to us and wanted to create two main parts of the brief. One was to create an inner city home for them, but also a showroom space and a guest residence for their fashion distribution business. The other part of it was to make sure that they retained a local pub on the ground floor tenancy, which effectively needed splitting the building because it was currently all working as one space. A little bit of context, it's in the middle of Abbotsford, right next to the train track, bound by Hoddle, Nicholson, Language and Gips. It is in a residential neighbourhood zone. There is a heritage overlay, and it's just under 400 square metres as a site context. As you can see there, it's literally right next to the train track is where the orange line is adjacent to it. But it's a freestanding double-storey masonry building of significant amount of brick in it. Dates back to about 1889. It's individually significant, not only just as being a corner hotel, but it has a sort of social and architectural statement about it in terms of the heritage context.
It's a significant building within an intact, significant workers' cottage area.
Yes.
So it's sort of socially significant in terms of its function.
Interesting sort of, this is the existing plans when we sort of effectively got taken through it and had to sort of start working through it. It was almost set up there's a boarding house on the first floor above the pub downstairs, so there was really sort of 12 individual rooms where the original volumes had been carved up quite horrifically into a lot of different spaces. So the first part of the works we did, I think, was a very good process in our favour in the end, is we worked through a process of doing a stage one building work that didn't need a town planning permit while the main permit was being processed, which meant we could basically restore and strip out the spaces back to the original volumes. Part of that was the yellow space was isolating the pub on the ground floor tenancy, so effectively the small area on the white on the ground floor plus all of the first floor was the scope we were working with in terms of the interior and the brief. That gave us the process of, this is a really great photo on the left of seeing where there was basically partition walls cut through cornices and floors and how it had essentially been divided up into a whole series of existing rooms. So the really great process that gave us from a design perspective was to understand and edit it whilst we were designing. So essentially getting that bit of strip out work done was fantastic. Not too many horrors, I'll be honest, in terms of what's there. What was really great about it is it's unbelievably well made. The builders were quite sort of shocked, I'll be honest, at the quality of the brickwork and how level and true everything was. It's kind of I think it's a quadruple brick in some places. So there was actually there was a lot of kind of quite nice uncovering and discovery in that process. Original fireplaces, cornices and skirtings. Three key parts of our design brief from the client. One was to create an inspiring and light-filled suite of connected spaces for living and working. We've worked with them for about 10 years on and off on various projects, so we knew them quite well. Reinstating the legibility of the original primary volumes. They loved the building and you kind of couldn't read it internally at that time. But also creating a contemporary interior, which had sensitively sort of respects and understands the building, but actually is quite confident and unapologetic about the moments that are contemporary. So from the original space, which was essentially all commercial as the pub, the red area is what was separated out as the residential and showroom, including there at the top right corner, that was the former sort of meat store that just became a sort of little extra room off the terrace for them as a gym. The other part of the brief that was just adding a little more layer in was, having worked with them for many years, there's lots of pieces of custom joinery and fixtures and fittings we'd already designed and specified for them in previous homes, and they wanted to make sure that was all integrated and reused, which is quite a big constraint when we've got a 5.5 metre island bench, etc., from the kitchen to kind of bring back in even the laundry sliding doors, which seemed like such a sort of simple thing. They really wanted to reuse them because they liked them as opposed to just because their old site was being demolished.
There's a sustainability factor to that as well. I mean, they're very committed vegans, and the pub is a vegan pub, and it was also, I think they beat Andrew McConnell to buy the pub, so they kind of felt that they could sort of make it a smaller, probably less profitable vegan pub, but they had an emotional connection to those pieces, and they also just thought it was a challenge to get them in, but it was really important to them that those, as much as possible from their existing residents, could be reused.
We'll take you through this bit quickly as we're down to 3 minutes already, but essentially the ground floor entry space was about reinstating the entry. The former Collingwood Football Club team room became a studio and suite, and then connecting through to a new ensuite, which was originally an outdoor yard, but had already been enclosed into the pub. And then upstairs is effectively the primary volumes are about living, working, kitchen, a snug and a library, leading out onto a terrace and the gym in the former meat store, and then a new area called the Retreat, which was a contemporary intervention as their dressing room and bathroom, and then leading through that space back to the bedroom. So essentially, it's upstairs is really a very large one-bedroom apartment, which is obviously quite a generous brief to get.
So really there's sort of three sections to the program. The first one's the downstairs entrance and studio. As Mark said, was the original home of the Collingwood Football Club meeting rooms. And then the first floor living zone, and which is sort of used as a workspace, living space, and then the retreat of the third space. So downstairs, through the main entrance, looking through into the sort of heritage room of the football club. The main intervention here is a sort of single piece of joinery that allows the space to go from a workspace, showcase, guest room, kitchenette, and then opening the door up through to the bathroom, sort of hidden in underneath the old, in an old service yard. So it's previously an external area, which we're able to keep all the external fabric and run through. And then probably the most interventionist section of the interior is the new stair, which is a full gloss finish steel stair, originally conceived as timber, and then when we were working through, it became a bit of a value management element but it became better in steel. It was much sharper, and generally all the interventions of modern elements we expressed as fine steel, so they balance the heaviness of the cornicing and the original features.
And ended up working with a metalworker who was a car automotive specialist in terms of sort of his skills, which was great in terms of that development. And then it basically leads you up to the start of these primary living spaces.
Hopefully this has made it as legible as possible. You can see that reinstating the original arch was very important in keeping the sort of spatial forms of the stair, but the stair itself is new. And there's a series of new openings that just provide glimpses out and light from all directions. So the original form of that room is the original space, but we've just opened it up to provide views through.
A lot of study in the end was about sort of proportion and just finesse to make sure that they felt very contemporary but very elegant and worked with the sort of weight of the building.
And then original fireplaces, cornices, skirtings were all reinstated. And then this is maybe 50% previous kitchen, 50% new joinery, because the kitchen was much larger than previous. So it's again, it sits in a totally corniced room, and an old fireplace, but with a very contemporary interior.
Bringing back the existing, almost nearly all the floorboards were original. They managed to source Baltic pine to match in where we needed to restore, and for areas like the changes to the staircase as well. But keeping all the sort of very sort of almost simple and respectful of the original fabric, but then being much more confident with these contemporary interventions.
And then going through, with a purposely small opening into a sort of a darker space, which is a lobby through to the sort of retreat. This is their basically walk-in wardrobe, completely lined in timber.
An absurd amount of clothes for fashion distribution time, as you can imagine.
And then sort of, again, a small opening through to their main bedroom, which is then a very heritage room.
So stepping back into that room, and then sort of essentially that retreat of sense of, because it was a bit of a work and live space, that sense of almost going through the timber box was about removing yourself and then going into this sort of the warm grey bedroom as a lining from there.
And then the view through from the walk-in room through the very contemporary bathroom, but looking out to the meat store as a separate building beyond, which has the original Vickers Gin signage. Again, was very important to the client to try to keep those original features.
A timber-lined bathroom, again, he wanted to reuse their taps, which is amazing, but unusual and kind of slightly complicated sometimes when it's a completely different space. But very much a hotel kind of brief from them in a way that they sort of want to live and work. And then one of the sort of most significant sort of works of the facades was then an enormous picture window that literally looks out the train track from their shower, which again, they're unusual clients, which I love about working with them in terms of loving that sort of morning ritual of waving up the train from their bathroom. The other thing that was kind of, we're out of time, but to quickly talk to was the process was really great for us. We worked with the builder and the client before, so we didn't do full construction documentation. We did enough of a set of drawings for them to really get a good cost plan. And then as we revealed the interior, some of the design started to be worked through in both sort of sketches and then additional details. So for example, all the balustrading, until we uncovered the junctions between the masonry and the floor and really understood them, we meant that we worked through in just a kind of constant assessment of was budget okay as we went, basically.
The construction was really collaborative, and there was a great process of working with, there was these great hard plaster workers who came from Ballarat, and they were in there. I think the oldest guy was in his 30s, and there's a series of young team, and we have our black book of craftspeople, but they tend to be much older older than us, and it was just really nice to have this young team of people who were teaching us about elements and plaster, and they're just so engaged in that process. That's sort of good to see for the future of craftsmanship.
To be honest, it was and that's sort of them now inhabiting it more as a home, but it was a highlight of COVID, being on site with a job that was still allowed to complete, with working with a team who was just so committed to it, actually. Sorry, that was a whirlwind.